delighted to be here.
We are very glad to have you here. Absolutely. Okay, sorry, actually, I was a few minutes late. It's at 12:04, so I will get started. I just want to say thank you so much to Wendy for keeping us on track, organizing the Addiction Grand Rounds. And today is a special Addiction Grand Rounds, which in fact we moved from a different day. And I will let Susan to introduce our special guest. But before I do this, I just want to say, as you know, thanks to Susan and many more people in the all IRP, not just the clinical program, we have been really working a lot in increasing our community outreach efforts. And I really want to thank all of you for doing this. And one thing we did back on November was Saturday, November 5th, was to have a NIDA Health Expo here in the BRC outside in the parking, which was a super successful. Susan led these efforts, and many of you contribute directly or indirectly. And during the day, actually, I met Miss Michelle Petties. I will call you Michelle if it's okay with you. And we had a wonderful chat, I believe, for at least 30 minutes. And Michelle was telling me about her own experience with food. Actually, she used the word food addiction. And I say, this is sometimes controversial, and in particular from people with lived experience. Some people are embracing that word, but some people actually don't like that word. So I was very actually curious to learn more from Michelle about why, when you talk about your relationship with your food and how you lost the weight, etc., why you see that as a food addiction. And, and I and many more people much better than me could give a lecture about food addiction, and the neurobiology, the mechanism. There is actually a very, very nice paper in neuropsychopharmacology from actually Dr. Kub is one of the co-authors with the Catherine Moore, who is now at Hopkins, and Valentina Sabino, and Pietro Cotone. There was a few years ago, neuropsychopharmacology about the neurocircuitry, the mechanism of a pathological overeating, just as an example. But the truth is that who else better than someone who went through this experience could actually tell us about how they felt and how that experience was. So I personally think I will learn a lot from you, Michelle, so I cannot be more grateful for being willing to be with us and share your time, your wisdom with us. And with that said, I will give the mic to Susan, who will formally introduce you. And thanks again.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lorenzo. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce you to Miss Michelle Petties. She is a former advertising insider, author, speaker, and inspiration. She is also a food addict in recovery. Her debut memoir, Leaving Large, The Stories of a Food Addict, a category winner in the 2022 Memoir Prize for Books, features the award-winning essay, The Cake is in the Mail. Looking at Michelle today, you would never guess that she used to be morbidly obese, once tipping the scales at 260 pounds. After gaining and losing over 700 pounds, Michelle finally discovered the secret to winning the battle between her mind, body, and food, her story. And from there, I will go ahead and let Michelle take the mic, but please welcome Michelle Pettis. I've known Michelle for many, many years in the advertising world, and I'm happy to have her here today.
Oh, Susan, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. And thank you, Dr. Leggio, for making space for me today. I'm just delighted to be here. So I have a presentation that I would like to share with you all. So if I can be made co-host, or if I'm already co-host, I can pull it up and we can jump right in.
I wonder if are you able to share this? Because I think you should be able already if you go to share screen.
I can share it. I can share it already. Let me see if I can.
You should be able to.
Okay. Okay, great. Can you all see it?
We could see your web browser.
Yeah, not
Okay,
yet.
how about this?
Oh, we're in there now. Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
You
good.
are, there you go.
Yep, that's good.
Perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to jump right into this. These are my grandparents. My grandparents, Frank and Annie Mae Pettis. Everybody called them Pete and Pigeon. I don't know why they did that, but those were their nicknames. And they raised me. And they were really committed. They were really committed to loving and caring for me and giving me plenty of good food so that, I could live a healthy life. And they were also, committed to my college education. So when I graduated from UTA in 1981, they were really pretty delighted. And even my grandfather, because he wanted me to be a doctor, but what he got was an advertising person. So he would be pretty excited that I'm here talking to you today. But nonetheless, my grandmother wanted me to explore new and different things. So she was excited when I got my first job at an advertising agency in Dallas in 1981. I was on my way. And just a little bit about the advertising industry. I worked for, back then, one of the largest advertising agencies in the world. I was super excited. The name of the agency was J. Walter Thompson. And at the time, a lot of the New York agencies were moving their teams to Texas so that they could explore the great Southwest. And I was fortunate enough to land a job where I was the assistant to the woman that ran the office. It just turned out that Donna Wald was Jewish. Now, I am from Marshall, Texas, and I grew up there in the 1950s and early 60s. I didn't know any Jewish people. And the reps would bring in food all the time to really to celebrate the office. That was part of how they got into the office. And I remember on one of my very first days, a rep came in with this big plate of pastries and just wonderful looking food. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I have never seen donuts that big." And that got a real big laugh from all the people that were Jewish in the office. They were like, "Girl, those are donuts, those are bagels." I didn't even know what a bagel was, right? I had no idea what a bagel was. And so one of the other assistants pulled me aside and she explained to me, the bagels are a part of our culture. We boil them and then we bake them and we eat them with lox. And she explained to me what lox was and the cream cheese and this whole experience. I was fascinated. And so I did what my grandparents expected me to do. They sent me off to college and I come back home and I bring my newfound knowledge back home and I share with my grandparents. Oh, my grandmother specifically, "Wait till I tell you what I'm bringing home to you today." And she's like, "Well, baby, what you got?" "I've got this new thing that all the advertising people, this is what they eat. This is what makes you an advertising person." And so I pull it out and she said, "Well, it looks like some bread." I'm like, yes, it's bagels." And she said, "Okay, all right." And she's looking at it and I said, "And here's what they do. They put lox on it and it's salmon, but it's smoked. It's not like what we have in the can. It's all different." And so she gets the bread, the bagel, and she says, it's kind of hard." I'm like, yes, it's supposed to be because it's bagels." And she says, "Okay." She tries it. And here's the thing about my grandmother. My grandmother wore dentures. And so she was struggling. She was kind of struggling with it. And she took a little bite and she's like, "Oh, well, sweetie, I don't think this is for me." Right. And then she looked at me and she said, Is this what you eat all day? Bagels?" And I said, "Yes, because they're bagels." And she's like, "Well, no wonder you're so stopped up." Now, what I just told you is what I call a food story. And what food stories do is that they explain how we manage and what we believe about certain foods. And if I should talk to someone who's Jewish about a bagel, their memories and the events and the experiences and their thoughts about their food are completely different than the thoughts that my grandmother would have about it. It's the same food. It is the same food, but we all connect differently to it. And we have thoughts and feelings that drive how we consume the food. That's what I figured out for myself. And my actually learning about my food stories and rewriting the food stories that did not serve me for so many years was really the key to my overcoming my battle with obesity and processed food addiction. So it was Labor Day. It was Labor Day, just this past Labor Day, and I was at a barbecue, and there I am at the barbecue, and this woman came up to me and she said, "Oh my God, I know you." And I was a little nervous because I was like, have I met this woman before? And I don't remember. I mean, does my memory, what's going on? And she says, "I know you. My friend Ann bought your book for me." And I was kind of salty with her when she gave it to me, but I read it anyway. I have lost 40 pounds. Thank you. Your stories resonated with me. And I have got to tell you that whenever I hear someone come up to me and say that, "I read your stories. I have never felt more seen. I have never felt more heard." It really, it does something for me. And I'm so happy that Anne, who's there in the yellow on the left, bought the book for her friend Fontella, who is there in the orange. And so whenever I say that, I wake up every morning and I feel like, are my stories going to be enough? Will they make an impact on this food addiction crisis that's facing not just the United States, but the world? And that is really why I am so thankful, Dr. Leggio, that you made this opportunity for me today. Dr. Volka, I'm thankful for her, and Susan, I'm certainly thankful for you. And and while I am grateful for Fontella, and while I am grateful for Anne, my heart does break for what I had to go through, what she has to go through, and what we all have to go through in this food addiction space that we're living in. But about me, I want to kind of move my story along. I am a 40-year plus media professional. I work at WYPR here in Baltimore. I'm a writer, speaker, food story coach, experiential eater, emotional eater, and I am a processed food addict in recovery. And that food addict in recovery is something that I will be this for the rest of my life. And there's a piece of me that feels like that everybody is an emotional eater. We just don't always know how to unpack the emotions. For so many years, I was overstressed, I was overworked, I was overwhelmed, I was overfed, and I have just toggled between being obese and morbidly obese for 40 years. But I'm also a almost 65-year-old Black woman. My birthday's in May. And all the statistics tell me that I should have diabetes, that I should have high blood pressure, and that I should be on the road to stroke and to heart disease. And what I know is that over the course of my lifetime, having gained and lost over 700 pounds, and at my highest being 260 plus pounds, that I used to hide. I used to hide from cameras. I used to hide from mirrors. I used to hide from the scale. And for decades, I tried everything. I tried hypnosis. Yeah, tried that. I tried surgery. I tried clinical trials, and almost every diet in between. And I just felt trapped. I felt trapped in this space between the what and the how. I would lose 20 pounds and gain 30. I would lose 30 and gain 40. I would lose 40 and gain 50. And I was fighting this, there was this battle going on between my mind, body, and hunger. And for real, I didn't think that I would ever find peace around this issue. And then I was also struggling with the fact that, well, maybe this is just what my life is supposed to be. I'm supposed to have this body. In the eyes of many, I was really living a good life, right? Or what I thought was a good life. Had a house, had the job, but I was still disconnected. I was still disconnected from who I'm really supposed to be, or who I was really supposed to be. So here's what happened. And people always ask me, okay, when did you know? What was the thing? What was the final thing? And I was at a conference in 2018, quite a few years back, and I found myself just devouring 5 slices of pizza in about 5 minutes. And maybe it wasn't 5 minutes, maybe it was longer than that, but it was way too many pieces of pizza in much too short a time. Is what it was. And I couldn't seem to stop. I couldn't seem to stop eating them. It was slice after slice after slice. And it was like somebody was, force feeding me this veggie pizza. And I was thinking, well, veggie, vegetables are healthy, right? Vegetables, so it must be okay, but it wasn't. But I was horrified. I was horrified because I had just finished up my last round of liposuction like 2 years prior. And I had said to myself, if I can get to a 14, if I can use this liposuction and get to a 14, what I call a Black woman's 10, I can keep it under control. But there I was 2 years later, with it out of control, with it horribly out of control. And I couldn't understand it. And what I couldn't understand, here's the thing that I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand, and that's me back back in the early 1980s, working in Dallas at KDFW. And I want to digress for a second and say, in that picture, I had just started that job in 1983. And by the time 1984 came, I was 217 pounds. And when I left there again in 1987, I was down to 160 pounds. So it was in that window was when I was diagnosed as being morbidly obese for the first time. But I couldn't understand how I could spend 40 years selling $100 million. I sat down and I did the calculation for major media brands, for major media outlets, always being a top performer, but I could not figure out how to lose 60 pounds and keep it off. And it made me feel like a failure. It made me feel like a failure. And I was in this space where I just had to, just wipe the marinara sauce off my mouth and go do something about it. So I was just sick and tired. I was sick and tired. I left that conference and I went to a doctor. And I went to the doctor with it in my head that, all I want to do, I just want to walk into a White House black market and pull something off the rack and wear it. That's what I want to do. I just want to be able to wear cuter clothes. That became my motivation. But with that being my motivation to wear cuter clothes, what I didn't know at the time was that and I just pulled this information up, 1.9 billion people around the world that will be living with obesity come 2035. I didn't know that. I was just thinking cuter clothes. And that the global impact of obesity is $4.3 trillion. And that there has been a 100% increase in childhood obesity from 2020. It will be from 2020 to 2035. I mean, you all work in this space, you know those statistics better than I do. But the notion that by 2035, that 1 out of 4 people will be living with obesity, it breaks my heart when I think about those statistics. So back to the doctor's office, I got to the doctor's office and I was stressed, I was tired, I was angry, I was frustrated, but I also knew that this time had to be different. I didn't know how it was going to be different, but I knew that it had to be different. And so the doctor said to me, like the doctors had said many times before, follow this plan. And I knew I could do it because I had done it before. And she said, you're going to lose weight, you won't be hungry, take these shots. I said, okay, I had done it many times before. But she also stressed sleep, she stressed water, and she stressed writing. And I listened to her like I hadn't before. And I listened to that writing part like I had never listened to it before. And it made an impact. It made an impact in a really important way, what I found out. But here's kind of where it gets tricky. I was following the plan, I was losing weight, I was feeling good about myself. And I wasn't hungry, just like she said. And then something happened. And one day I found myself wanting to eat. And I knew I wasn't hungry because I had just eaten. So I couldn't understand, why do I want to eat when I know I'm not hungry? What is going on? And so I stopped and thought some more. And I remember back in the 1990s when Oprah was doing shows on emotional eating and how much she did those shows. And I started thinking about them. And I started thinking about how I actually did go to counseling. I went to therapy. I spent a number of hours and years in therapy dealing with depression, which I didn't know that I had, dealing with childhood sexual trauma and sexual abuse, which had happened to me, dealing with the abandonment issues that I felt that came from living with my grandparents. But there was always something missing, and I couldn't connect the how to the what. I struggled with that how to the what part. And in that moment, I prayed. I was like, I need an answer. And here's what I did. For the first time in my life, I was 60 years old at this point, I looked up the word food in the dictionary. I looked it up. And when I looked it up, here are the words that resonated with me: nutrition, nourishment, and energy. Nutrition, nourishment, and energy. That's all food is. And it is like a light bulb went off in my head that is food's only purpose. It is not entertainment. It is not activity. It is not pleasure. It is just nutrition, nourishment, and energy. And I just got this burst of clarity. And almost at the same time, this other story came up kind of in my consciousness. And as I told you, I'm from Marshall, Texas. My grandparents were farmers, and I was visiting, years ago, and I was on my uncle's farm. And my uncle was probably 75 or 80 years old or so. And we were having a cookout, a barbecue, and we were having watermelon. It was like, Black people and watermelon, who knew? But that's what we were doing. And I'm like, Billy, do you want some of this watermelon? And he was like, no, I don't eat watermelon. So here's what I want you to understand. My uncle didn't say, I don't want watermelon. He didn't say, I don't like watermelon. He said, I don't eat it. And I thought that was a little different. So I'm like, well, there's got to be a reason. Why don't you eat it? Why don't you? And I kept pestering. He was like, I just don't eat it. And he finally broke down and told me that when he was a kid, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, really young, that he and some buddies stole a watermelon from a neighbor's garden. And when my grandfather, that grandfather in that first picture, that his father found out about it, he wasn't happy. And here's what I want you to know about my grandfather. My grandfather was a railroad worker, and my grandfather was a church trustee. And the one person, a kid that just stole a watermelon in the 1930s, does not want to meet is that guy. And so my grandfather beat him. My grandfather beat him so severely that my uncle never ate watermelon again. And as I let that story settle over me, even back then, even before I knew I was going to be on this journey, I said to my uncle, well, Billy, do you think maybe the lesson was supposed to be, thou shalt not steal? My uncle just looked at me and said, I don't eat watermelon. And that was that. And so when that story came up in my consciousness, and when I combined it with the definition that I had read about food, nutrition, nourishment, and energy, I was like, this is the answer. This is that space between the what and the how that I had been missing for the past 40 years. This is it. Is that my uncle's feelings about watermelon, his connection, the experience, that moment, that event was so traumatic that he never, ever ate that food again. In that very moment, the consequences of the food were so dire that the food no longer had appeal to him. And I said, if that experience was causing him to stop eating, then other pleasurable experiences and events and memories that I'm attaching to certain foods was a source of my not being able to stop eating. My cravings and binges were rooted in the emotions and the experiences that I connected to the food. And it was in that space that I got this deep understanding about what a food story was, and that I could make a fundamental change in how I manage food by changing what I believed about the food, by going back and uncoupling these connections. And so as a result of this, I mean, like every day since, I have these epiphanies about what food means, how we connect certain experiences to food, and what the experience really means, and what the food really means. And the food doesn't mean anything other than the fact that it's nutrition and nourishment, and that our power is in being able to separate our feelings from the food. And that's a process. But I just want to hit a couple of highlights of some things that I discovered along the way that I wanted to share with you. One, that for 4 years, I was eating too much of the wrong things for the wrong reasons, and I was doing it unconsciously. And the real power in this for me has been the fact, once I got conscious, once I started focusing on my consciousness, and once I started focusing on the reasons, then it was easier for me to address the amount and the what. So for so many years, I would go on a diet, and my first thought would be, what can I have and how much of it can I be? How much of it can I have? And that was just behavior. That was a belief system, and they were in conflict. And this consciousness and the reasons would always fight against one another, and the belief system would win. The only problem food solves is hunger. And when I just got really clear that food is just food, it is inanimate. You know, we say relationship with food all the time, like food can do something for us. It cannot. It can only solve hunger. And so once I got clear that part of my addiction was the fact that I was looking for food to do something that it can never do. It is a one-trick pony. It is a one-trick pony, and we just connected. I was just connecting it to emotion. Then the third thing is, like, I just developed a series of questions that helped me to learn the difference between hunger and the desire to eat, and that food management is just a skill. And what I know now that I didn't used to know is that there are all sorts of forces and messaging that's out here that wants me and other people like me to eat when we're not hungry. When I drive down the street and I see the signs for a Burger King or a McDonald's, and you look at all the fast food restaurants and their signs are in red and yellow, that's because red and yellow stimulates appetite. And we're kind of like in this jungle, trying to fight all this messaging. Just yesterday, I was listening to my station, and there was one of the chefs, one of the cooks, one of the resident cooks were talking about recipes, and she was talking about this egg and how to fry the egg in the olive oil and the garbanzo beans, how to put the garbanzo beans on it, and how wonderful and beautiful it is. And the host said, "Oh my goodness, this sounds so wonderful. You're making me hungry." And what I know is that description wasn't making her hungry. That description was making her want to eat. And being able to know the difference between hunger and just the desire to eat, just because something shows up in your stomach, doesn't always make it hungry. Doesn't always make it hungry. Doesn't always make it hunger. And that has been a journey to figure that out. But it has made all the difference for me to know that just because I have a desire to eat doesn't make it hunger. And that also that food is everywhere. And that's one of the things that makes it so difficult for someone that is a food addict, is that food is at the center of church, religion, education, career, culture, identity, family, friendship, And I'm not saying that, we can't use food as a connector, but sometimes food can cause some disconnection. And that's what I found, because if we use the food and we're not talking to one another, then that doesn't keep us connected. And that certainly was the case for me. There's a part, one of the stories that I write about in my book. I talk about a friend who was having a conversation with me after we debriefed, and she said, Michelle, the first time I invited you out to lunch, we went out to lunch and you never looked up from your plate. I was horrified. I'm like, no, that's not true. And she said, yes, it is. And I knew in that moment that if I had done that to her, that I had done it to so many others for so long, and that it was causing disconnection for the food to be more important than the person who was right in front of me. And the fifth thing, and this understanding that I needed to fundamentally change my belief system about food was key for me. When I started focusing on changing my belief system, then my behavior changed, then everything changed. As long as I stay in the lane of food being nutrition and nourishment, everything stays clear. Everything stays clear. And what happens is that when I'm nourished and I can identify hunger, then I can identify these other emotions that are kind of swirling around and learn how to deal with them in an appropriate manner. But for all the years that I was using food because I was lonely, because I was bored, because I was tired, because I was sad, because I was frustrated, because I was angry, those things never got dealt with. Those stresses just stayed in me because food could never solve it. And I never figured out the tools I never figured out how to get the tools to deal with those things that were really causing my problem. And so once I was able to get the food piece in line, then I was able to start working on these other things that were out of balance in my life. So those are just a few of the kind of revelations or epiphanies that I've had in this journey. So the next thing I want to do is I've gone through a couple of food stories. I've told you the watermelon story. I've told you the bagel story, of how I made misconnections with food and feelings. And there are so many more. And they happen every day, but we just have to be able to sit and identify them. So what I have here is a list of a few different food stories that I'm happy to share with you. And I don't want to pick them. But if somebody has one that they would like for me to share or discuss, because I tried to make the titles interesting so that we could talk about them. So if there's some, just unmute and I will dissect one, and maybe it'll help you understand more about how food stories work.
Would you fight at the post office?
Oh, yes. Fight at the post office. Right. So here's what happened. It was around lunchtime a couple of weeks ago, and I went to the post office. And I'm standing in line. I'm trying to get my box done, and the clerk at the post office and a customer are going at it. This customer is not happy about something, and the post office clerk is going back, and they're just going boom, boom. It's just, I mean, it wasn't a physical fight. It was a verbal thing. I'm standing in line, and everybody's uncomfortable by this altercation, if you will. And then things calm down. He leaves. She tells him something. He leaves. I go take care of my package. And when I walk out of the post office, I say to myself, oh my God, I am so hungry. Now, here's the thing. I wasn't hungry when I walked into the post office. I walked out of the post office and said, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I want something good to eat. I wasn't hungry. What I realized when I walked out of the post office, and because I stopped, right? I stopped and thought about that urge, is that incident in the post office upset me. It upset me. And I realized that I was sensitive to situations and things that happen around me. And when I stopped in that moment and said, I know it's lunchtime. I wasn't hungry when I walked in the post office. I'm really not hungry now, but it made me uncomfortable. And the thought of having some food, having something good to eat would ease the discomfort of what I felt of having to view that altercation. So that's the fight at the post office. And that's how these microaggressions that happen to us and happen to other people all day long. And you just think you're at work and your computer comes on, you get a little nasty gram or somebody calls you or some disruption happens in your day and you think, oh man, I'm going to go get some chips. It's not hunger. It's not hunger. But if you're dealing with all these disruptions all day long and you find yourself going to get a snack food or get some chips or get something all day long, it's to protect you. It's to protect you from all these arrows. So that's the fight at the post office. Does anybody else have one?
Michelle, there are several in the chat.
Oh, they're in the chat. Okay, thank you.
I'll tell you what some of them are.
Okay.
Pecan pie or my girlfriend wife.
Oh, yes. Okay, oh, yes. Pecan pie, my girlfriend. This is one of my favorites. So when I grew up in the South, as you know, and my aunt, my mother's older sister was like a super dessert maker. And during the holidays for Christmas time, she made, and pecans grew in our backyard. So pecan pie was an easy dessert. We would get them all the time. She made these fabulous pecan pies for Christmas time. And my cousins and I would always get so excited with these pies, anything she made, we got excited. So my cousin was about 16 or 17 years old. It was Christmas time. And we had finished dinner and he had a new girlfriend and he was headed out. Mama, I'm done with dinner. I'm going over to Deborah's house. And my aunt said, well, Bernard, don't leave. I made your favorite. I made pecan pie. And he said, oh, Mama, I don't eat pecan pie. I don't really eat sweets like that anymore. And he headed out the door. In that exchange, here's what happened. When she said, oh, son, don't leave, I made your favorite, I saw the look of expectation in her eyes. When she said that, I said, and Dorothy, I'll eat the pecan pie. She said, okay, right? But here's what I know, that was me in a people-pleasing mode, right? How many people pleasers here? We got some here. I saw the disappointment in her face when he said, I'm leaving. When he said, I don't want the pecan pie. When she said, I made pecan pie, she didn't care whether he ate that pecan pie or not. She just didn't want him to leave. She wanted him to stay and spend some more time with us during the holidays. And so she was using the pecan pie. He thought she wanted to stay. He thought she wanted him to eat the pecan pie. And I know my cousin, if my aunt had said, oh, son, can you just stay 5 more minutes? Let's chat a little bit. He would have stayed. But he heard pecan pie. I don't want it. He went to his girlfriend's house. So in that moment, because she couldn't even express, son, I want to spend some more time with you. Right? She didn't get her needs met. All he saw the pecan pie for what it was, as a dessert, as a treat, as something to eat. He didn't understand that her request was for him to spend more time. But here's what I know. When he got to his girlfriend's house, if Deborah had pecan pie, he was going to eat the pecan pie. This is what he would have had it at his girlfriend's house. So that's my girlfriend, the pecan pie.
Okay, there's another one, Mary Poppins and Netflix.
Oh, yes. So Mary Poppins, the very first movie that I remember going to see was Mary Poppins. It was out in California. My aunt took me. It was such a big deal, right? And we headed to the movie theater, and we had dinner before. We left to go to the movie theater. I'd never been to the movie theater, and we got there. We were going in, and people were standing in line getting popcorn. And I said, "Oh, I want some popcorn." And my aunt said, "We just ate. You're not getting any popcorn. You're not hungry, but I want some popcorn." No, we're not buying popcorn. You're not hungry. You know, let's go on and watch. We came to go to the movie. So I'm, feeling some kind of way that I can remember. The next time we went to the movies, my aunt popped popcorn. I know you're not supposed to do that, right? She popped popcorn, put it in her purse, and took it to the movies with us. When we got to the movies, and I saw the people in line with the popcorn, I'm like, I want some popcorn. I want some of that popcorn. Just I had popcorn in my purse. But here's the thing. It wasn't about the popcorn. It was about the full experience. That's why I said earlier, I'm experiential eater, right? It was about, this is the connection to that experience of standing in line, of the popcorn coming out of the thing that the popcorn comes out of, them putting that stuff on top of the popcorn that's not even butter. It's the whole experience that was drawing me in. And so the Netflix piece is this. Here's for any of you that have family, that have children, try this and you'll see what I'm talking about. Cook dinner. Cook dinner, cook your dinner, cook your family a nice, wonderful dinner. Then pop on the next, about 30 minutes later, pop on the next Netflix and pop some popcorn and watch who eats. You will know that it is about the experience. It is not about nutrition or nourishment. We attach all these things that happen in our environment to food, and the food people know it. So try it. Just try it, and let me know. Just email me, let me know. Everybody ate popcorn, nobody ate popcorn. I bet you they ate popcorn. Okay.
We got several others, and I don't know how many.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
And it's a little bit of what Dr. Aponte put in the chat. And it's kind of this idea, this point of body positivity versus obesity, and the point that everyone in the world has tried to regulate Black women's bodies. How do we accept body positivity and the right to self-regulate and define our bodies and how we want them to be, but also understanding that certain behaviors lead to certain health consequences?
Yes. So, I get this thing about body positivity. I get it. And what I know from having spent so many years myself toggling between obesity and morbidly obese and being overweight, that there's nothing that anybody else could have ever said to me in terms of shaming that was worse than what I ever said to myself. There's not. But here's the truth, is that this is a health crisis. This is a health issue, and that we can't face it if we can't fix it. And what this is my own personal belief. I think people are just so tired and so beat down, and they have tried so many different things that have made them feel like a failure, and they feel like I can't do it. So I can't do it. So I'm just going to accept it. I'm just going to feel good about where I am, because I don't know, because I don't have the tools to change it, because I don't know how to change it, because it's too hard, because it's too this. So I'm just going to be okay. But here's the thing that I say about that. I can stand in the mirror and say, I love myself 100 times a day, all day long. But if I don't make self-honoring choices, I am still abusing myself. And that we have got to figure out how to make a shift. And we get so much messaging. We get so much messaging that tells us to eat when we're not hungry. This is critical. People, I don't think people just have clarity. I think people are confused. I was confused. For 40 years, I didn't know what real hunger felt like. I had to go through this process to be able to figure it out, because you have signs that say food is happiness, that food is joy, right? We have all this stuff that we have to ferret through and figure out unless we have absolute clarity, and that we're willing to stand in that clarity. We're willing to stand in that clarity, because people will, it's like we'll almost force you to be a food addict. Oh, You want another piece of pie? You sure you don't want another piece? Right? Do you want some more? Here's some more. Would you like to supersize that? How about? It's like you go out to dinner and you have the appetizer, you have the main meal, and you have the dessert, if you will. What? It's all food. Everything is designed for us to consume more, and it's accepted. It's not like it's just accepted. It's like it's encouraged. It's like you're encouraged to overeat on one end, and then you're ridiculed for overeating on the other end. But here's the thing, and there's a piece of me that feels like I could do my book over and rename it. It's Leaving Large: The Stories of a Food Addict. I misnamed it. The name of it really should be Leaving Large: The Story of a Processed Food Addict, because we're in this space, and I'm sorry if I'm getting agitated. We're in this space where this food addiction thing is so critical, but it's not really food addiction. We need food to live. We don't need processed food to live. My book should have been Stories of a Processed Food Addict, because I never ate 5 bowls of green beans. I never ate 5 bowls of broccoli, but I did go to a Mexican restaurant and eat 5 baskets of chips without blinking. Would you like some more chips? Yes, and bring some guacamole. Would you like some more chips? And bring some salsa, right? Just shoveling, because it was sweet, salty, and greasy.
But Miss Michelle, there's also food disparities. In certain communities, you don't have access to the unprocessed foods.
Okay.
And it's also, now we get into capitalism because people are making money off this.
Okay, so Brenda, I'm so glad you said that. I'm glad. So I get the access piece. The access piece is real. But here's the piece that is stronger than access. Desire is stronger than access. Because if you, right now, you put an apple down in front of somebody, you put a McDonald's fried apple pie in front of somebody, you put a slice of mom's apple pie down, the apple is going to lose every day of the week, because there is more desire that is created around that fried apple pie and mom's apple pie. The thing that we have to address is desire. So you can put healthy choices, in an environment or in a space, and you can put the food where people where there's created this demand for it. And unless somebody has the desire to make a healthier choice, that healthier choice is going to go unchosen, uneaten. So you can put pizza, right? Which I ate the 5. You can put pizza there, or you can put, a salad and some asparagus and a piece of fish and some lemon. Pizza. I want, because I'm gonna feel deprived. I'm gonna feel deprived if I'm eating my little tuna and my little tuna salad sandwich, and everybody else is eating pizza. That's because we don't look at it the same way. The key thing that I did is that I started seeing processed food and real food for what it was. And the best example I can give is, the best way that I can explain this is in this way. Years ago, a younger guy wanted to date me. Not only he wanted to, I went out with a younger guy. I was all excited, right? Oh, look at him. He is so cute, he's so cute, he's so handsome, he's so young, right? I was flattered. I was flattered until I got to know him. And then once I started to see things about his character and his personality, they were repulsive. Once I got to know who he was, and I looked past his handsomeness and saw what was behind him. Once I saw what was behind him, I didn't even want to be around him, right? I didn't even want him in my world or in my space. That's how I see processed food now. So in the old days, I would go to a Popeyes and get three things of those French fries, the crispy fries with the stuff all on the outside that's all salty and greasy and red and hot. I get three giant things of them, scarf them down before I left the parking lot. right? There's nothing you can do right now that's going to get me to eat a French fry. I don't have a draw. I'm not tempted by French fries of any kind. I'm not tempted by any, because I look at them differently. In the old days, I would think, oh, they're hot, they're greasy, they're crispy, they're tasty, they're this, they're that, all that, they're spicy, all the stuff I like. Now when I look at a French fry, I see something completely different. I see something that is not going to serve my health. I see something that is not going to serve my digestion. I see something that once I eat it, I'm not even going to feel good. I see something that doesn't have any nutritional value. I see something that I don't care what it tastes like, because I know that it is not going to serve my body. So once we started looking at these processed foods for what they really are, for the fact that they destroy, they destroy how we can live, healthy lives, and we can see that, then it becomes easier for making choices. Now, we don't even have a desire for it. So that's why I can go to a restaurant now, they bring out the dessert tray, I don't even see it. I don't even see it, because when I look at it, I see poison. I mean, all that refined sugar, all that stuff that's in it, I don't even know what's in it. Right. So we have to just start changing. I started to change the lens through which I looked at stuff and saw how it was really going to impact my body, not what the manufacturers wanted me to see. Did that answer your question? Okay.
And Ms. Pettis, I think also Jen had a question. Jen
Okay.
Barb.
Oh,
Okay.
yes. It was interesting because my question arose as you began to talk about the processed foods and the impact that has on the addiction. And so I found your story very interesting with respect to the behavioral mind shift you had toward food. And then how long did it, when you started to actually think about food as a nourishment, was it like at the same time you were like, well, I'm going to not choose the chips because they don't nourish my body. I'm going to actually go for the fruit and the whole foods kind of intake rather than the processed foods. Because I feel that with food addiction, a lot of it is this high level of processing, and there's chemicals in those foods that actually can cause you to become addicted to it.
Absolutely. You are right on point. You are absolutely right on point. And I mean, I am still evolving, right? I am still evolving, but in that, when all of this was happening, I wasn't even necessarily thinking specifically about processed food. I was just thinking about better food. I was thinking, I wasn't focused on processed food. I was focused on eating whole food. I was focused on, here's my lane. My lane is fresh fruits, vegetables, and lean meats, or lean protein. I just wasn't thinking about processed food. It wasn't until later when I started reading, I was like, oh my gosh, it is processed food. It is that. So it was a subtle shift, but it was a shift nonetheless. Yeah. Did that
And
answer? Yes. Is there another question?
well, there are many wonderful comments in the chat, but since also time is running, some people will leave soon.
Okay.
I will pick up two kind of comments I see coming from multiple people. So one is about the parallel between ultra processed food and other substance, alcohol, drugs, addicted drugs. Like, do you see a parallel where ultra processed food could be eaten in moderation? I think this is one of the questions. And the other would be, what's your perspective about whether the word addiction, in a sense, actually could be stigmatizing versus actually the word addiction giving more a medical value of the problem? I mean, I think something I was striking is when you said you did seek medical advice and guidance to make this happen, which is a big step to recognize that's not bad behavior. That's something I need help with. So if you could share with us your thoughts about this two topics.
Yes. Okay. So, I, on the medical side, from the first time that I was diagnosed in the 80s as being morbidly obese, when I went to this bariatric doctor, going to a doctor was always my fallback. So I would go to the doctor, get on the program, lose weight, but I would gain the weight back. So that was part of my challenge, I guess. And the thing is, I just followed the diet. I never made the mental shift during all those years. I never could quite figure out that there was something that was keeping me from being able to stay with the plan. And in this last round is when I realized that I was fighting these stories. I was fighting these beliefs about food. Clean your plate. You have a plan and they say, just eat. No, just don't eat until you're hungry, right? Or eat this amount. That's in every diet plan. But if you have a food story in your head and you grew up like I did, we don't waste food in this house, right? Clean your plate. You go someplace like Cheesecake Factory and you feel compelled to eat everything on the plate. Right? Because you haven't unpacked that. You don't know that you have this underlying belief that makes you move in a certain way. I'm not sure if I really answered that question or not.
Yeah, no, you did absolutely. Thank you so much.
And then there was the second one. What was the second one?
Yeah, the one that actually there are many comments in the chat. So do you think that the ultra processed food could be consumed in moderation?
No. Oh, yes. So I think that is a big hoax. Addiction and moderation cannot exist in the same space. I say I'm ahead of myself, but so it's tricky. It's tricky. Here's why it's tricky, is because you have processed food and then you have real food. And we have to have real food to live. We do not have to have processed food to live. And so if we cut out all the processed food, not in moderation, because it's got the salt, the sugar, and the sweet that triggers everything. And I don't even really like to use the word trigger. But it activates. It activates everything. And you find yourself, why do it? Why put yourself in this place of eating something that's salty, sugary, or greasy, and then be in the state of, okay, for this little taste, now I have to be in this place where I'm resisting for the next 6 hours for this 3 seconds of sweetness that I had. And just because it's going to draw you in. The addiction is going to tell you, you can just have a little bit. This one little bite won't matter. That's addiction. That's addiction talking. You deserve this. You've been good all week. Right? Everybody else is having some, right?
Right.
That's addiction. But if you ascribe to this is like the thing. If you just accept the purpose of food is to satisfy hunger and nourishment and nutrition. If you just accept that is the truth. And so when you eat, and if you're a vegetarian, I'm sorry, but if you eat your broccoli and your carrots and your fish and you get full, then what's the purpose of dessert? Now dessert becomes rewarded pleasure, but food is not rewarded pleasure, and dessert is not even food. Dessert is just processed. All this is just processed stuff. So once we're able to kind of get in the world where we see food is food, the nourishment nutrition is one thing, and anything that we eat outside of that is for some other reason other than hunger. And food is the only thing that can satisfy hunger. And so we're eating for these other reasons, then we have to do the other things. We have to do, if you want some joy, go do something joyous, don't eat, right? If you want a reward, go do something that's going to give you a reward. Go celebrate in some other way. It's not food. So it's a fundamental shift in thinking, but it's a fundamental shift in thinking that I got because I wrote, because I figured out that writing did it when nothing else could do it for me. And I don't think that I'm alone. I don't think that I'm alone in that space, and being able to get to the point where I could write for healing, not, but I'm jumping ahead of myself. I know we're running late on time. I'm sorry. I can be kind of talky. If I can go to the next slide. I get so excited when I talk about this. I can wrap up, and then we can have any questions if we stay a little bit longer.
Wonderful. But this is great. Thank you.
Okay, so now you know for yourself that it's not about, you know the truth. It's not about the food, it's about the food story. It's the story behind the food. And I just hope that the exercise shows you how powerful it can be to unpack your food stories, because the food story, this whole exercise, this whole thing, it is just a tool. And it's a tool that I found that helped me create space. It helped me create time and space, and it between eating, right, the desire to eat and eating itself, it gave me a disruption. It gave me a disruption and an opportunity to be guided by nutrition instead of addiction, because I'm in this space where I'm thinking about it. And the truth is, for so many years, I didn't know that I was an addict. All right. I didn't know that at all. And I didn't know, I just thought that I didn't have discipline or willpower or self-control. I didn't know, and somebody mentioned this earlier, that processed and fast food were engineered to be addictive. I didn't know that processed sugar was addictive like cocaine. I didn't know that a $70 billion weight loss industry was counting on me and so many others to realize that addiction and moderation cannot coexist. And I'm sorry I'm reading this, but I didn't want to leave anything out. I didn't know that my emotional needs and nutrition needs were being unmet and that I was malnourished all around. I didn't know what to do with the constant dull ache of daily aggressions and microaggressions, my uncle's abuse, not my watermelon uncle, another uncle, my childhood perceptions of my mother's abandonment, and my deep-seated need for acceptance, and that I could never eat enough to feel the emptiness or end the pain. I didn't know that my overeating was rooted in fear. I didn't know that learning how to access the same brain that would lead me out of my hometown of Marshall, Texas, and lead me to these grand rounds, I'm so excited to be here, would lead me to the secret of my weight loss success. Not a food log, not journaling, but prescriptive writing would heal me and free me from living out a legacy of ill health, obesity-related diseases, and processed food addiction. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, but connection. And that's connection from community. That's connection to yourself. That's connection to other people. And the lack of connection was blocking me from joy, from peace, pride, freedom, power, confidence, and my true purpose on this planet. I didn't know that as long as I was a slave to food, I would never be able to step into the fullness of all that I have to offer this world. I didn't know any of this until I found, faced, rewrote, and replaced my food stories. And now I know. And what do they say? If you know better, you can do better. I'm a woman on a mission to raise the collective consciousness of why we eat what we eat. And yes, I wake up every day afraid that my stories might not make an impact on the food addiction crisis faces the world. But I am just audacious enough to also wake up every day with the bright and shining hope that they will make a difference. Thank you for your time today. And thank you for all of my brothers and sisters who are in battle with this addiction problem.
Thank you, Ms. Petties. Thank you so much. This was really great. And there have been a flood of a chat and from people saying how wonderful this has been. Also, I have received some emails. So really, on behalf of all of us here, NIDA and NIH, thanks so much for sharing your experience, for your time. I will give the last word to Susan, and I would just mute myself by saying one more time, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And I will put my information up here. If anybody would like the notes, you can scan the QR code. I will send the notes to you. Or if you want to connect with me, you can follow me, or you can just email me at michellepettis.com. And I'll scroll. I just want to show you can connect. And then that's my uncle with the watermelon. That's my watermelon uncle right there.
Cute. Wonderful. Susan, you have the last word. Thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Michelle. It was very enlightening, and I will follow up with you if I get any questions someone hasn't sent to you directly. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry about that. Zoom quit on me.
I'm trying to get out.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, here we go.